Good morning, everyone. It's Brian here from Turning Leaf Realty Group, and we're here again this morning. And we have our special guest with us this morning is Ellen Aders. She's State Farm Insurance representative here in Front Royal. And Ellen, thank you for joining us. And would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got interested in your chosen fields, and how you ended up in Front Royal?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, when I was in college in Western Kentucky, I needed a part-time job, and I went to work for a State Farm agent in Bowling Green. When I graduated, I really did not want to leave my college town. And the agent said to me, well, you've graduated, you need to go on and do other things. And it really upset me. So Murfreesboro, Tennessee was just about an hour from my college town. And at that time, State Farm had a regional office there. So I applied for a job in auto claims and moved to Tennessee and started my career with State Farm in auto claims. And from that point, I did a whole bunch of other stuff with State Farm. I lived in Tennessee, I came back to Kentucky, I moved to Florida, and then realized that the agency opportunity is what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to do it down in Florida. I wanted to be closer to home. Started looking all over the United States and fell in love with Front Royal. There was an opening here, and in 2010, I moved here.
So
yeah, that's State Farm. Outside of State Farm, a little bit about me. I love animals. Most people here know that I was affiliated with the Humane Society of Warren County for 9 years and had to retire after term limits in April of last year. I've gotten really active in the Rotary Club of Warren County and Downtown Front Royal Inc. and a lot of other stuff going on in town.
Yeah, did I ever tell you that I actually grew up in a State Farm family?
No.
My father was a State Farm agent from as early as I can remember. He was with State Farm for 37 years. He had offices in Falls Church and later Centerville and finally Manassas.
Really?
And I have a sister who went into the claims division of State Farm and ended up as one of their special claims investigators like that.
Wow. And
she was the one you never wanted to hear she was the one you did not want to sign to your claim because it meant they thought something fishy was going on.
Okay. All right. Wow. You're a salesperson. And a State Farm family, and you didn't land in State Farm. I can't believe it. It's never too late.
Afraid I did not. My own career path was similar to yours in that I got a job in high school shelving books at a library.
Oh, fun.
And when I got out of college, by the time I got out of college, I had already progressed into a position first in the circulation department of the library, secondly as a reference librarian. And I stayed with them for 25 years after that.
Wow. That seems like a dream job to me. I worked part-time for Barnes & Noble when I lived in Louisville and had a full-time job with State Farm. And I did that just for fun so I could be around books. So that's really cool that you worked in a library all that time.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I say so.
Did. Of course, what we do now is real estate, and we are, help clients with all aspects of real estate transactions. And since a home is, for most people, the most valuable asset they're likely to own throughout their life, what role does insurance play for a homeowner? How important is it, and what should they know when they're looking for coverage for such an important asset as their home?
One of the most common things that we see in my office, especially for a first-time home buyer, if they don't land with a specific local insurance agent and they rely on their loan processor or whomever they're working with to help them secure the insurance, they don't really have any idea how much their house is insured for, how much it costs to insure it, because it does get built into your monthly mortgage. And when we ask who has your homeowner's insurance, they oftentimes don't even know. So it's really important to seek out someone local, talk to them about your home, make sure that you've got adequate coverage, because another common misconception is that the amount of insurance on your insurance policy has to match the amount that your loan is worth. And that's absolutely not correct. We want to build your house back. And a lot of times there is a difference in what you pay for the house and what it costs to build the house back. And if you have more coverage on your homeowner's policy, thank you very much, because you're just giving State Farm more money. but you won't ever realize value in that. So making sure that you have exactly the amount of money that you need on your homeowner's insurance policy to build your house back should something happen is the most important thing that you can sit down and discuss with an insurance professional.
Well, how do you go about deciding how much coverage is necessary, especially in the last couple of years? The real estate market has been inflammatory. It's just going up and down with values, but that has also been mirrored in the construction industry. In that, I think anybody that's tried to buy any kind of construction materials, anything from a house to a 2x4, is going to realize how expensive things have gotten, and prices go up, prices go down. For a builder, the costs of their labor go up. They generally don't go down.
No,
they just keep going up.
Yes.
So how do you determine if you've got enough coverage, and how? Well, I guess this question is, how do you know if you have adequate coverage? And
there's a couple of different ways. The most common way is most of your large insurance companies, State Farm's not any different. They use a tool. We'll sit down with the customer. We'll ask questions like how many square feet, what's on your roof, how many bathrooms. We're going to dig into all the specifics of your home. We enter it into our estimated replacement cost tool, and it has all of those values in there. So the cost of labor and the cost of building materials, and that can calculate a replacement cost for us. If there's a difference, if the customer doesn't agree with that, they do have the option to submit an appraisal. It has to be a for construction appraisal, and we can use that also. The cool thing about our policy, and most of your common insurance companies, their homeowners policy, they have an inflation guard built in. So if you're paying attention to when you get your renewal, most people do not, you'll notice that the replacement cost on your home is going to change slightly almost every single year that you renew. And it can get out of whack. So we recommend that at least every 2 or 3 years, people come in and review it, tell us about changes. Let's go through the calculator again and make sure that you still have the right amount of insurance on your home.
When somebody's looking to get home insurance, what are the questions they should be asking themselves or be ready to ask you when they come into your office so that they can make the most of their time?
The most important question, or I guess maybe the most misunderstood concept, is replacement cost. And we even get those questions from the bank also. So replacement cost is what most of your homeowners policies have, but you're only going to have that replacement cost up to the amount of insurance that you have on your policy. So if we have a policy for $250,000, we're going to build your house back, replace it up to that $250,000. So if it only takes $200,000 to build your house back, you've paid for $50,000 worth of insurance that you don't need. If it costs more than that, then you're in trouble. So that's why I say, explaining what replacement cost means and how it works and having that conversation about your home, it's critical. Your personal property is also built in. So I like to tell people, when you take the roof off of your house, turn it upside down and shake it, everything that falls out is personal property. Sometimes people have items that they collect, special antiques, things of that nature, and we need to increase that amount. So those questions are really important. Backup of sewer and drain, especially if you live in the town limits of Front Royal. If the sewer backs up into your basement through a drain in the floor, which happens frequently, if you don't have an endorsement on your policy, then we aren't going to be able to come in and help you with that. So it's important to have that conversation. And I would say the other conversation needs to be about, people will call us frequently when they have to have the water line dug up from the main to their house. That is the actual homeowner's responsibility, not covered by your homeowner's policy unless you have that endorsement on there as well. So,
and it's not owned by the town.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes, anything that comes from that water main into your house, through your front yard, your backyard, your side yard, under your driveway, that's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned about personal property there. What are some of the common personal property items that people have, which may have specific limits to it that we may or may not think to ask about? I'm thinking about jewelry, firearms. I think you mentioned additives, special items that may have a cap in your standard policy that you might have to ask about separately.
Not only do they have a cap, which is usually relatively low, for firearms and for jewelry. You know, listen, are you sure you don't want to consider State Farm? Those things are going to be subject to your deductible. So a standard deductible on our homeowners policy is usually $1,000. So if you have an item of jewelry that maybe costs $1,500, you're going to owe the first $1,000 before we can help you out with that. There's a better way to go about insuring those types of things, and they're inexpensive. But other things that people get confused about, if you've got motorcycles or you have antique vehicles that you're working on, if they can be insured on a private passenger automobile policy, they are not covered under your homeowner's policy. Oh. So think about that for a minute. If you're restoring an old car and your house burns down, if you don't have that covered under an auto policy, it doesn't get covered under a homeowner's policy. So all of those, the more that I know about you, the better that I can help you. And it isn't just that your insurance company's being nosy. We just want to make sure that when that claim time comes, we've got everything that you have covered the way that it should be.
Another question I sometimes get, renters.
Mm-hmm.
As a somebody who's renting property,
Yes.
the house or apartment building is the responsibility of the landlord.
Correct.
What about my personal property?
That's all on you. Yep, that's all on you. And that's also something very reasonable. And people don't think about that. You go in, you rent, you don't really think about your stuff. Or maybe you don't even really have much stuff. You're just getting started. But if there was a fire or a water loss or your property was damaged, you got to go out and replace new things. One of my favorite stories is I had a customer come in that was trying to figure out a way to reduce his premium. And he said, well, my couch is from 1970. I don't need all of this coverage on my personal property. But if he'd had a loss of some type, even though his sofa's from 1970, we got to go out and buy him a sofa in 2023. So people don't think about that a lot of times in regards of replacing things. And renter's insurance is incredibly inexpensive and totally worth its value.
And valuable to people. But that is, you just brought up a point there. So when you're talking about the insurance replacing items, even though the item itself has wear and tear on it, it's got some age to it, and if I was to try and sell that item specifically straight out, I might not get very much for it.
Correct.
Is one thing. But if you actually have to replace it, I think the phrase that I've heard thrown at me was that you replace it with something of like kind of quality.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
true.
that could be certainly a different item. Something I might not be able to get $100 for that sofa on Craigslist, but to replace it might cost me several thousand.
That's right. Yes, that's exactly right. That's why your replacement cost is really, really important. And, I like to tell a story about when I was a brand new agent here. I tried to reach out to everyone in the book of business that was assigned to me by State Farm to introduce myself, to sit down, have a conversation. Lots of the homeowners policies had been written by the previous agent and his father before him, and I'd never put eyes on a house. Not everybody responded, and I was on Christmas vacation home visiting my family in Kentucky, and I got a phone call from State Farm Claims. So they'll call me at home in an emergency situation. And one of my customers had a water loss on the third level of their home. A pipe broke. They had wash and dryer on the third level. They were out of town. The water went all the way down to the basement. So we've got 3 floors of damage. It was a historic home built, probably in the early 1900s, fully restored. And when I finally was able to meet with the client and he came back, we were approaching that replacement cost value, and I wasn't certain we were going to have enough money to fix his house. And I said to him, Mr. Client, I've called you multiple times to review this. And he said, well, I just thought you were going to try and sell me something. So I probably would have tried to sell him something, but I was also going to review the homeowner's policy to make sure that he had enough insurance to take care of a claim should it happen. So you can always say no to a proposition for a product, but to make sure, again, you're reviewing and have the right coverage, it's so, so important.
And I guess what you're really trying to sell him, though, is peace of mind.
Yeah,
That.
Definitely.
We all hope and pray that loss never happens, but when it does, you're really hoping for it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Nobody wants to pay for their insurance or even talk about it until it's claim time. And it's hard. It's very hard. I've had a complete fire loss Sunday afternoon, sitting down, I just poured a glass of wine, getting ready to kick back and relax. State Farm calls me at home. You have a customer whose house is on fire, totally consumed. So I went, and I was there with the clients, with the firefighters, watching their house catch on fire, and they lost everything. And being able to have a person and not an 800 number that can be there, I was able to give them a check. I was able to put gift cards in their hand. We got them in a hotel that night, so they had a place to stay. People don't think about that. And to think of losing your whole home, then what? You need a person to help you with that process.
Yeah, and you bring up a really important point. I mean, I'm a big advocate of buy local wherever possible. And that there's two reasons for that. One is you're supporting your local economy, you're supporting your friends and neighbors. But at the same time, if something happens, I've got a person that I can get face to face with to talk about my needs and to come alongside and help.
Yeah. Yes.
And that applies to all kinds of things. It's like it's not unlike getting your car fixed. It's like, could you imagine having the 800 number to get your car fixed? You don't know. You need the mechanic to take it. Sure. But you can sit down. He knows it, and he can look at your problem and put hands on it and fix it. Mm-hmm. Why do we treat things like insurance differently than that?
I know. People who have had claims don't. They don't. I'm at home in the middle of a snowstorm. I just live about 3 blocks from my office, and someone's called me and said, hey, we've had an accident. We don't have our insurance cards. So I put my snow boots on, and I walked 3 blocks up to my office, and I got the insurance cards and was able to send them to him while he was still there, getting the accident stuff settled out. So little things like that make a big difference in the middle of a claim situation.
Personal touch cannot be overstated. What other kind of insurance products do y'all offer? I mean, we talked a lot about homeowners insurance. Of course, as real estate, that's what one of the big things I'm with. But what other areas of insurance do y'all cover, and what other areas that should your average person be aware of, looking for?
It's interesting that you asked that, because when we first started the interview, you mentioned that people's homes are their biggest asset. But in the insurance world, we like to point out that their ability to earn an income is usually their biggest asset. And the minute that ability to earn that income is taken away, whether it's from a premature death or a disability, now everything else dominoes behind that. So we like to talk, especially to first-time homebuyers who are taking on their mortgage for the first time. We like to have a conversation with them about life insurance. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. If your spouse doesn't come home tonight, how are you going to pay your mortgage so you don't have to uproot your family and move out of the home that you've just bought? It's important. Nobody likes to talk about it, but it's a really important conversation. So we offer life insurance, we offer disability insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance. We insure all your toys, boats, ATVs, motorcycles. We have a small health insurance plan that's supplementary to whatever your major medical would be. It kind of covers your hospital expenses. And I can't really talk about it other than to say I can help you play for retirement legally. I can't talk about it. Unsee me if you want to know more about that. So just about everything. I take a lot of pride in the old buildings that I insure on Main Street, because I love Main Street. I love downtown, and being able to go in and help protect those buildings, that's close and near and dear to my heart. So your commercial stuff, we can help you with that too. As you see the cost of building materials and labor go up, that's obviously plays an impact on how much it's going to cost to build your house back. The same thing holds true with your car insurance too, though. If you think about where we've been since COVID, no one was driving. Nobody was having wrecks. So we were able to decrease those auto rates significantly because we weren't paying things out in claims. As people have started to drive again, those rates have ticked back up. And we found ourselves as an industry in a weird position where it's very difficult to get parts. It's very difficult to get glass. Labor rates have also gone up in that market as well. And if you've tried to rent a car lately, good luck. I mean, sometimes you can't even find a rental car. So we've had to adjust our auto rates, as has every insurance company, to try and find that spot where, we're reasonably priced and we can cover our claims and account for all of the things that make up our rate. So it's just always ever changing.
Yeah, I've always found it kind of interesting that insurance companies are one of the few industries that can charge us differently based on who we are and where we live and what we do.
Yeah, it's true.
Because if it's, for example, I know from a father with teenagers that I'm going to pay more insurance on my teenage son than I am on my teenage daughter, because, as has been explained to me, the actual loss ratios of one demographic versus another are different.
Yeah.
And, you know, the company can actually look at profiles of their various customers and where they live and what they are, what they drive.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually differentiate places.
And you know what, to go even a step further, and again, State Farm's not the only insurance company that's playing in this space right now, but when we do have to adjust our rates, people always say to me, well, I'm a great driver and I've been with State Farm for 25 years and I've never had a claim. Why do my rates have to go up? And I mean, we pool our resources. That's the whole concept of insurance. When your house burns down or you do have a wreck, you only have to pay your deductible because everybody else is paid in. So one of the coolest things that's really making its way in a big way is there are all kinds of different programs. Ours is called Drive Safe and Save. So it's a tiny little beacon that goes in your car. It talks to an app on your smartphone, and it transmits data back to State Farm, and it tells us exactly how many miles you're driving in a year. And it tells us if you're a good speeder. It tells us about your braking and your cornering, and it monitors all those things about your driving habits so that when we do have to take a rate increase, if you're a really great driver, that Drive Safe and Save discount is going to offset that rate and personalize your plan even more to you. And people get bent out of shape and think it's Big Brother. State Farm owns the software. We don't sell it to anyone. We already know everything about you anyway, probably even the color of your underwear. So, you know, if you've got the capacity to have the smartphone and the little device, it's well worth it to have that and to enroll in that program, because it does help offset the rates when they have to happen.
Yeah, it was interesting. I forget who I heard say it, but I heard someone once say that one of the things that we all have in common is that we all believe that we're above average drivers.
Truth. That's true.
Which obviously cannot be true.
No. My favorite thing to do when people say, well, I don't know about that, is I get my phone out and I show them that on average, my driving score hovers around 77%. I got a heavy foot, especially when I'm on the interstate, and I still manage to save and get a discount, even though my driving score is around 77%. So other factors come into play besides that help us, you know, determine your rate. So it's well worth your while, no matter what insurance company you're with. Check out their program where that's concerned.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard it explained that well.
Yeah.
I'm one of the I guess I had probably thought that it is somewhat intrusive.
Yeah.
What I believe, especially since I probably don't want my insurance company knowing how I drive.
Yeah.
At least not all the time.
Mostly it's helpful. Mostly it's helpful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can we talk about trees for a minute?
Oh, absolutely.
I know. I'm just thinking about trees. I was thinking about all of the weird things that give me trouble on a regular basis that I can address here today. So when somebody calls me to talk about trees, I almost just want to hang up the phone and cry, because it's the biggest misconception. So here's the way it works with trees. If your tree falls on your neighbor's property, it is your neighbor's homeowner's claim. So I'm going to say that in reverse. If your neighbor's tree falls on your property, it is your homeowner's claim. In the insurance world, we consider that an act of nature, an act of God, so we can't hold one another liable for that. So be a good neighbor and trim your trees, because nobody likes it when it's their neighbor's tree that falls on their fence and then they find out it's their homeowner's claim and not their neighbor's homeowner's claim. You know, that's funny you should mention that, because this last week I got a call from my neighbor, and I have 12-acre parcel. Mm-hmm. His house is near the property line on one side. It's a side of the property I rarely ever go on, so I'm not real familiar with what's going on with the trees over there. And there were a couple of them that are looking a little unhealthy on that side. And we formulated a plan, at least preliminarily, to help deal with this, to keep those trees. It said that if something happens with those trees, we'll know what to do. Yes. Be proactive and take a couple. I've given him permission to take a couple of them down. Yep. So that they don't fall in his yard unexpectedly. Yes. And I think being proactive in things,
especially with the health of trees, trying to be proactive is
Yes.
a benefit.
We just evidently had some stuff in Strasburg, Middletown, over in Shenandoah County last night with wind and hail, and I'm certain I'll have at least one conversation today about trees. I'm certain of it, and it's always hard. It's always hard, but keeping them trimmed, having a nice relationship with your neighbors can go a long way. But that's a big misconception about is trees, so I just have to throw that in there.
And that's why we love having these conversations, so we can learn things that we would not normally think about.
Yeah.
And again, being proactive, being, getting ahead of the game, and just being aware of what your rights and responsibilities are.
Yeah, it's true. We need to know right away if there's a claim. Let us know. We can help you, tell you some things to do, put a tarp on the roof to mitigate the damage. But we're not the adversary. We want to put your house back. We want to put your car back. And it's an emotional time when there's a claim. There's no doubt about that. It's always emotional. So I can't stress the importance enough of having a person to talk to when that happens.
Ellen, what advice would you give to somebody who might be considering getting into the insurance field?
Well, I've just been trying to recruit you since we've been sitting here. So I went to school for journalism. I thought I was either going to report or write the news. I never dreamed I would have a career in insurance. And I heard somebody say the other day, speaking of another profession, that it's not sexy. And I can say that about insurance too. It's not sexy, but it's been a great career for me. Helping people protect things that are important to them. It's just so rewarding. And being a person in a community that has a business and you're able to give back to your community is probably the most rewarding thing that I do. I just told a young lady who started work in my office, she said, well, I don't know that I really want to be an insurance person. I think I would rather work in the nonprofit world, but the nonprofit world really can't pay my bills. And I said, well, think about it like this. If you own your own insurance company and you're helping the people in your community and you're making a good living, then you can give back to your nonprofit world in a different way than you're thinking about. So, get with a great company. I love State Farm. We're the biggest car insurance company in the United States. We just celebrated our 100th birthday. So the support that I get from that organization is amazing. But insurance in and of itself, there's always something new every day. And it is rewarding in a whole lot of ways. So do it. I say do it. Just don't do it here. Stay out of my turf.
Ellen, well, then, thank you very much for taking your time to be with us. We really appreciate it. And again, if y'all have any questions about insurance, Ellen is right here in Front Royal. Don't hesitate to call her or any of the other great professionals in the area. Hopefully you've picked up a few tips here, and we'll see you again later. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.